Thank you. So remember the other night I asked this question. The issue at hand is capital infrastructure management, or how many people are capital infrastructure facility planners. So how many people were at the last meeting, and how many people know the answer to this question? How many people here are capital infrastructure facility planners? Raise your hands. Okay. And how many people might raise their hands and say they're not? You're chicken now, because you know some people know something you don't know. I said at my last presentation that everyone here is a facility manager. Everybody here is a capital resource manager. And why is that? Because in one way or another, you have had to buy real estate, you have rented an apartment, you have empty nesters possibly as parents, and they're downsizing their capital position in a house or in a condominium or in an apartment or in a nursing home. Then I asked this important question. Things come along that start spending our dollars for us and taking away from what we can afford in terms of our house or our apartment and whatever. So tonight I want to look at the upper right-hand corner. There's a Volkswagen, if you will, in a shopping cart. So let's look at that Volkswagen. This is a perfect example of what we're going to be dealing with in terms of effective and efficient. Some people might say, I want the most economical car possible. I'm going to get myself a Volkswagen. Then the family grows and grows and grows, and they say, well, I still want to be as cost-effective as possible. I'm going to get a Volkswagen. Until the question becomes, we're going to take the big family vacation. Well, what do you have to do? We have to take 2 Volkswagens. That sounds like a silly example, but it's exactly similar to what's being faced by the school district. So then we ask the question, we'll have a Volkswagen and an SUV. That SUV might be pretty expensive to drive, and the insurance rates might be high, similar to utility costs. What's the quantifiable element that allows us to compare the effectiveness and efficiency of these 2 vehicles? The miles per gallon. So similarly, we want to come up with an instrument and a standard that allows us to compare fairly and equitably our educational facilities. So let's remind ourselves, from the master plan a couple weeks ago, we had 6 or 7 steps. The first was collect data. We're going to do that. Assess existing facilities, which we're going to do as well. Discuss educational trends, some of which I'm starting to talk about tonight. But the most important focus I want to spend a few moments on for the rest of this talk, establish prototype standards that are efficient and effective. One of the elements is going to be your enrollments. Many of the schools here are facing different and fluctuating enrollments. We need to understand that and will. Grade configuration I'm going to come back to. What should the grade configuration be? Kindergarten to 6th, kindergarten to 7th grade, or what? Existing facilities, what attributes do they bring to the table that we can use as part of the solution, and which ones do we have to really put aside because they're not able to be salvaged? As a result of that, know what's the capacity of your entire school district, and by so doing, assure that your arts, your musics, and your PE, which the district is really committed to now, is still being supported after the finances change in the future. So how I got into this business for the new people, I've got a background in curriculum, urban planning, and economics. I've been lucky enough to be a facilities director with a large school district, and I want to share with you throughout the rest of this talk some experience that I've gathered from working in school districts across the United States and Canada, in probably 28 states. One of the key issues from my previous talk was traditional schools have used space in a very traditional way. Your schools, built in their vintage, are very traditional in their layout. But as we're beginning to see, the educational program is changing substantially, and our educational facilities will benefit from changing with them. So what we want to do are create pace-setting schools that are effective and efficient in their utilization. So there are 2 issues at stake here: educational quality and the facility in which it's housed. I would never for a minute suggest that facilities are the answer. the most important issues are your teachers, who I'm meeting and seeing are doing an excellent job. Your class size is appropriate for the age groups and improving. The curriculum framework, I've shared some of it with you, is continuing to explore some of the best examples in the country and getting better. Instructional materials are good, and the technology used, you've seen, is incredible. And parental involvement by your being here tonight is very supportive. So those issues are in place. The question at hand is the role of the facilities in terms of funding and configuration, utilization, and size. So we've covered the educational excellence as far as program goes, but we also need the effective and efficient part of it. So let's look at some grade configuration questions. Grade configuration is what grades do you have in a school building? There are some schools out there that are K-12. They're kindergarten through 12th grade in rural areas. They're all in one building. There are others out there that go kindergarten to 8th grade, or preschool kindergarten to 8th grade, and others 9 to 12th grade. Many Canadian models do that. Some schools are kindergarten to 12th grade, or kindergarten to 6th rather, that's what you have here. 7th and 8th grade middle schools, and 9 to 12th grade high school, which you have here. Some might go K to 5th grade, a point I want to talk about. 6, 7, and 8 middle school, 9 to 12th. And believe it or not, there are some school districts that have very unusual grade configurations, and some of them you may know. They go pre-K to 2nd, 3rd to 4th grade in a separate building, 5th to 6th grade in a separate building, 7th to 8th grade in a separate building, and then 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And that doesn't even include school districts that have a 9th grade center. My point is, we have to overlap what is right for you, a configuration of grades as far as determining the standard for assessing your existing facilities. And finally, look at possible themes that might apply to the high schools. How do we handle what I think is an incredibly unique opportunity at the high schools, but also provide and assure the equity of educational opportunity between them? So what I want to do tonight is focus on the two middle ones here, comparing a 7th and 8th grade configuration to a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade middle school. Because we learned from some of your teachers that those 6th graders can really handle very well some advanced science and issues that are more middle school oriented. And finally, what could we consider for the academies that could exist at the high schools? This chart symbolizes what I've seen to be the case over many years of planning schools. The chart on the left-hand side shows the cost per student, while on the bottom it shows the school enrollment. So what I'm showing you here is basically the cost per student rises if you have a small student enrollment for usually a similarly sized square footage building, but it has too many hallways. We've talked about that, or other things. As you add students, you start reducing cost per student along that particular line. So what are some of the issues that can impact a very small school and cause its costs to rise so much? Well, you saw a couple examples, very wide hallways and an inadequate location of restrooms or inadequate provision of restrooms. Up here you see wide stairwells causing an expensive net to gross ratio. Or over here you see some old boilers that are in some of the older buildings that can't be effectively remodeled. You see an example of the library, properly outfitted with an incredible collection of books, but unfortunately, again, too few students, and the cost per student starts to rise. And up here, we start seeing similar issues regarding theater areas and gymnasiums. They're large areas, but they're not getting used enough. So let's look at the impacts on the elementary school. Self-contained classrooms. One of the issues we face, and a common problem in question, is if we increase our enrollment, do we lose the small-scale feel of the school? And that's a very fair question.